brought me into the situation 2 days ago, 3 days ago. But the basic idea was that a young lady has had 2 very good dates. Everything was going really well. But then the third date, just she felt was really poor and was very frustrated and was questioning whether to continue, what to do. Essentially, she would ask him a question, trying to get an understanding, and instead of getting a clear-cut response, you get a half answer. If you do this repeatedly, you start to feel very uncomfortable. An example, she knew that he came from a family that are anti-vax. Okay. Now, she comes from a family with several people in the medical profession. And she wouldn't be able to accept that her children would not get vaccinations. Doesn't matter what I think, what you think. That's just what happened. So she asks a question about what his position would be on vaccinating his children. And the answer was, I have to do research. I didn't understand this better. But at the end of the day, if you marry somebody and you don't agree, how are you proposing to figure this one out? Well, think about it at the time. And from her perspective, this is not an answer. You're trying to decide whether to marry somebody. You're not getting answers. The same question is asked, would you be happy to go on shlichus? I'm not sure right now. It's something which I'm kind of open to, but I don't know if it's for me. Same thing, not getting much of a response. And it has happened several times. She's becoming very frustrated. So she calls you up and says, look, the 2 dates went well, but his third date was, to me, was very unsatisfying, very frustrating. And I'm concerned if this is how things are, whenever we have to discuss anything more substantial, that I can't get proper conversation going, how we expect it to date. So what would you recommend? That she continues dating him or she walks away? Okay, the problem here is the communication is the deal breaker. That's what we're trying to figure out. So, yes.
I think if he's not sure if he wants to go on shlichus, and she wants to go on shlichus, is that what it was?
It was more the fact that you're trying to have a conversation and the conversation doesn't go anywhere. You're dating in order to see if you have what to do, as a possible marriage. And if you can't get a straight up answer, you feel like you're banging your head against the wall. So, anybody?
Other topics that perhaps the less controversial but still real question to see if there's a consistent problem that he has communicating or if it's specifically about certain things that were the issue that he.
Well, so this happened several times. It's possible that if they, spoke about whether they prefer cats or dogs, maybe this would turn out to be an easier conversation. But when you're talking about the kind of topics where this is what you need to figure out, it's hard really to say, find, whether you can agree on pizza toppings. Maybe you could do, but this is not going to indicate whether. So let me tell you what I told him. I told him that the question is not the right question. The way the question was presented is why we had the problem. In other words, I neither think he should continue, nor do I think he should not continue. Ve'im toimar you kind of have only two options. So V'yesh Shlomo, that there's actually a third option. In fact, not only is there a third option, but there actually the other two options don't exist. They're wrong. There is only one thing he should be doing. I introduced him to the word meta communication. Communication is what you do, is what we're doing now. We're having a conversation. Meta communication is when we have a conversation about our communication. We say, let's talk about how we're communicating. Why is it that there is this misunderstanding? Maybe we can figure out how the communication is going. In fact, I told him that a large part of what you do when you're dating is not just communicating on the things that you want to know, but it's about trying to figure out the relationship itself. I encouraged him to go on the next date and say, I'm here because we've had 3 dates. I like you. I think you're great. Here's all the things I see that are positive. But I want to talk to you about how I came away from the last date, because I found it difficult, because I didn't want to be rude, but I was asking questions and I didn't feel you were comfortable answering the questions. And yet I didn't want to go and push the question 3 times because it seems like I'm like not getting the message. At the same time, if I'm being honest, it was hard for me. And I just would like to understand from your perspective, how would you like to address these topics? How would you like our communication to go? Was it the way, something about the way I asked the question? Is it the topic? Talk about the problem. And initial reaction is, what? You mean I'm actually going to bring it up? Like, you mean I'm actually going to acknowledge that I wasn't happy with. So not only is the answer absolutely yes, that is the only thing you should do. Walking away is way too easy. Continuing as if there's no problem is plain stupid. The only thing you can do, if you like somebody and you think it's suitable, is to talk it through. So not only is this the obvious thing to do, but it's a great opportunity. This is the best moment so far in the dating. Because when you're busy talking about summer camps and you both have a nice time talking about Chveznish, right? That's not where you see the real potential. Where do you see it? Here you've got a difficult moment. He had the chutzpah to question the way she was dealing with the conversation. If her reaction is to throw this back into his face, he now knows for sure 50 years of having stuff thrown in your face doesn't feel so good, right? If, on the other hand, she handles it very well and says, listen, I understand you were struggling, it's not good. I accept ownership of that. I'm sorry that it was so difficult. Let's have this conversation again. I'll try to be more forthcoming. It could turn out that this very conversation, which was supposed to be that most awkward moment, becomes that breakthrough when they finally learn how to communicate, and will become the first meaningful challenge that they overcome together, which could be the beginning of many, many such moments. Because life is about overcoming challenges in the end. Where marriage is tested is when things are difficult, not when it comes to the most simple things that anybody can agree to or agree with. Ready to go on? Next story. Feel free, this is a conversation. Feel free to interrupt, disagree, whatever. Another story. The word push is the wrong word. The word pushing means you're just coming with your agenda. But to have a conversation, so can we talk about this? I brought up this topic. It seemed like the conversation wasn't able to progress. I hope you don't mind me asking, if we can talk about what happened here, and inviting in a very respectful and kind way, a conversation, so that maybe they will come to understand each other better. It's not pushing, it's the opposite of that. It's saying, I'm not going to push at all. I'm just going to open up a conversation and I'm going to let's see what happens when we talk it through. Of course, somebody can say, I don't want to talk about it, right? But then you've got to see now more clearly that they're not a reasonable person. What, you go on a date on your own terms alone, right? If you're on a date and someone says, you spoke about this and this. I found it hard the way this was dealt with. And you say, if you don't like it, there's the door. Well, you know what's going to happen? They're going to go through the door because nobody's going to be spoken to this way. Nobody wants to be married to someone who doesn't have respect for their feelings. So by bringing it up in the nicest way, with full of sensitivity and compassion, but nevertheless having the courage to talk about an uncomfortable subject, is exactly the right thing. So the next story involved a young man who called me up, and he said, I met somebody last night, and to be honest with you, it was a train wreck. Pasha didn't enjoy it at all. It was just very, very difficult. I tried to hold a conversation. Everything was like one word, 2 words. Couldn't get a conversation going. I tried. I kept over and over again. I'm exhausted. I just and right? I'm done. I'm exhausted from this. I specifically told the Shadchanim, I told my mother, I'm a quiet person. I need someone more outgoing than myself, somebody who can communicate. How did I end up dating somebody who, I cannot hold a conversation with? It's just too much to ask of me. And yet his mother says, you met once is not enough. You got to go out a second time. The Shadchanim is saying, let's go out a second time. And he's saying, you go out a second time, I'm done. I saw enough. It's not for me. Comes to you, what do you tell him? He should go out again, or he should walk away. Ma'aser Shahoya.
One day.
Had one date. The communication was terrible. Pasha couldn't get a sentence out of her.
Say something. She would just say something else.
He would, I'm making this up as an example, would ask, like, how was your day? Day was okay. So that didn't go very far. And say, and are you, what do you do today? I went to work. What's your relationship with family? No, Baruch Hashem, good. Right? And a conversation like, try this for 2 hours, right? Anything you want to add? Not really. Like, okay. So interesting. That was the piece of advice that in the ladies, we spoke about this as well, and this is exactly the same piece of advice. They said, which is true that people should give people advice and support. Maybe she needs a little bit of help. Maybe she needs to prepare better and come a little more ready to hold a conversation. Maybe. But that wasn't the question. The question was, the young man is asking you, should I go on the second date or should I stick to my guns and say no? Okay. So I told him that the question is the wrong question. Why? I said, tell me, what were you told about this young lady before you met her? Were you told she was very quiet, or were you told she was sociable? No, I was told she was sociable. I specifically asked. I said, your parents did research? Yes, they called 5 people. I said, and what do those 5 people say? She was sociable or she wasn't? They all said she was sociable. I said, so I'm asking you now a question. We have a stira. 5 people said she's sociable. Now you came and you saw she's not. Which one is more likely to be correct? That everybody else conspired to lie to you and she's really painfully shy and doesn't know how to communicate? Or she's really like everybody else said, and today she was very self-conscious and didn't come out of herself? Which one do you think is most likely?
People are always.
What you can if I meet somebody on a first date and she tells me she hates her mother and she wants to kill her sister, I would say, listen, I hear that's rough, but do I want to, Beseda, I'm only saying to you that you can make judgments after one date, even after 1 minute, right? If I were to take someone on a date and I go to a hotel lobby and she wants to order a faith drink, I'm not so from, but I never thought I was dating someone who doesn't keep kashrus. I'm thinking to myself, what? It's just the first date though, right? So the first date it's only non-kosher wine. Second date could be lobster. So you don't know yet. Come on, right? You're entitled to make judgments. The issue is here, not that you only had one date. The whole point of doing research is you'd never met the person randomly. You had done your homework. It sounded like it was good. Now, when you meet her, she's not living up to the reputation. So one thing has to be untrue. Either what you're seeing is not real, right? Or everyone's lying to you. Now, is it possible that everyone's lying? Yeah. But what is most likely? And so therefore, I'm giving you an Eitz Tova Kamash, my friends. If you meet somebody and a date goes badly wrong, before you react like oiva avoili, ask a question. What was I told about this person before I agreed to meet them? Was I told this person was like this? If not, go back. I said to him, I want you to go to your mother and say, call up one of the references again and say, just remind me, what did you say about how sociable she was? Right? Just give me the straight up, honest truth. She says, no, I work with her. She works in my office. Here's my desk, and that's her desk. And we talk all day. We never gave any work done. Right? She's perfectly sociable. What do you want from me? So obviously, she is. You say, Einenu horoyos. But you want to tell. Turns out, you never got a very good showing. She obviously wasn't herself that day, either because she was nervous or because she had just had a bad day. I don't know. You trust the research. The research is done for a reason. It's more likely. Now, if you meet the person 5 times and it keeps happening, or even 4 times, okay. But from once, Miss Tama, it's not been a good date. Just redo it. You say, I'm exhausted, I'm stressed. Go have good night's sleep, and tomorrow you'll be okay. You ready for the next story? Do you understand why these stories are important? Not because you are that person, because it makes you realize that we can think about things differently. We can open our minds to the fact that we're all different, and we have to be ready when we have a difficult situation like this, not to immediately assume we've got it all figured out, because we haven't. Let me give you the next story. I hope you're sitting comfortably. Listen to this. This is a Ma'aser Shoy. In fact, the next phone call I have when I finish this is with this guy. So I'm in the middle of it. I spoke to him on Thursday night. Here's the story. He is divorced. The person he's dating is a widow. They have been dating for a while, and he has really upset her. They were talking about marriage. They really like each other. They even said they love each other, but she basically walked away from him. Why? Because he said a bunch of things which caused her to be upset. I'll give you some examples. Some of you are very holy. You should close your ears at this point. But he commented that he had a housekeeper, cleaner, and said that she's pretty. Right? And she was very offended. Why are you telling me, if you're interested in me, why are you telling me about another woman is attractive? It's not sensitive. She was very offended. He said it'll never happen again. He promised he won't do these things. But then he made a comment about how he took his daughter to the Beis Yaakov PTA and made some comments about the teachers looking at him and the whole business. And she was again very upset about that. And again, he promised it won't happen again. And then, of course, he did it again. He made some comment about how he thinks about other women. But Kitsa, he was managing to make her very upset. And she decided, Zero, I'm done. Calls me up. What can I do to get her back? What can I do to change her mind? I'm asking you, what should I tell him? So Ma'aser Shoya, I'm speaking to the guy in half an hour. I need your advice. Sure. Go to Kashan, no? So what am I supposed to tell him?
You don't have to share all your feelings.
Okay, he I think by now he's figured that out, right? But the problem is, what is the okay? So let me tell you, he has spoken to therapists, to everybody, and nobody figured out Pasha Dazach. He has a processing disorder. His brain struggles to screen out certain things. We automatically, right, have a way of filtering without even trying things we know would be a bad idea if we said it. right? Let's say walking down the street and the kid is crying. And we say, well, that kid just shut up, right? You don't, you're thinking it, you are, right? But you don't go say it. Why? Because it's like, what did the guy really say? That the kid is crying. It's not, come on, right? I'm on planes with kids crying all the time. I think a lot worse, right? I'm thinking maybe there's a way to open that window and have the kid like kind of just float home, right? It's for 5 hours, the kid's screaming down your ear. It's very stressful, right? But you don't do it because the brain has a way of basically knowing what's dangerous and keeping away things that shouldn't be said from being said. You go to a wedding and you see somebody come and he's eating, you think, what a chazar, right? You don't go trying to say it. Why? Your brain says, no. You want to say it, but you don't say it, right? He has a problem that he does not automatically prevent himself from saying things. What makes him stop doing it? He consciously has to go through each item and say not to say it. He puts in the effort, which means it's mentally exhausting for him. And when he's tired or in any way a little bit not on his game, it slips through.
She knows, but he doesn't say.
He doesn't know until I told him. No. My conversation with this guy tonight on my way home is to help him to find the words to explain to her that even though he said these hurtful things which he should never have said, and she has a right to say, I don't want to date a person like this, I'm a married person like this, she needs to understand that it's not coming because he's an indecent person, because he's an insensitive person, but because he struggles. He has an actual struggle. Like some people have a struggle with, I don't know, hair loss, right? Some people struggle with shyness. Some people struggle with forgetfulness. Some people are. He has a struggle. It's a real struggle that most people wouldn't understand such a thing could exist. Now, yes, it's a form of Tourette's, right? Oh, yes, very much so. And he promised each time, like, Ba'olo v'shvua, that he would make sure not to do it again. But of course, he was making a promise he couldn't keep because he has no control over this, right? They wish have like 5 weeks. So okay. In other words, he was trying to promise that he would never do certain things when he should have better been honest about his limitations and the fact that he doesn't have full control. I'm not going to make a prediction about what's going to happen here, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when she realizes that he has this struggle and has to now ask herself the question, am I willing to accept someone who has this struggle when they don't mean to be hurtful? Or am I still going to say, seriously, I just can't handle this? That will be an interesting one. But why it's important, why do I have to stand there? Why am I telling you this story? Because you're unlikely to find yourself dating a woman who ends up just saying you're not going to believe it, but on my way here, I met this really attractive guy, right? No, right? It's unlikely to happen. But what you can learn from this is how things are not always what you imagine they are. And that you can have a bad experience and you can think this is the person must be terrible. How could they have done this? And people have their struggles. Does that mean you have to accept their struggle? No, but it means you now know what it is, as opposed to before where you didn't know what it was and you made up what you thought it was. And it turns out in many cases, it's not correct. So being aware that things are more complicated and more nuanced and to ask the questions instead of jumping to conclusions. I dealt with a young lady who had this very interesting thing. I began to pick up something was unusual about her. I asked her what her hobbies are, and she said one of her hobbies is skiing. So I asked her, oh, so when did you last go skiing? She said 3 years ago. But what's this funny? How can you say something is your hobby? You never do it. Okay. Then she told me she loves learning. I said, sure. Like, what do you like learning? Oh, I haven't done it for a long time. Right? I said, this doesn't make sense. She told me she even dates somebody 13, 14 times or something. She doesn't feel connected to them. She has this feeling that she doesn't feel she ever really has shown her real self, that the other person truly knows who she is. All this made no sense. After all these dates, why not? You start to realize something is unusual here. And so many times people date her think she's strange. And even if they don't, she just doesn't want to continue because she doesn't feel that this has ever really become a mamashastic. So my question to you is, what would you recommend? Yeah, but what's she supposed to figure out? She's come to you to figure that out.
Figure out.
Yeah, but she thinks her hobbies are skiing and learning.
Pick up. Meaning, like, set a back.
Okay, so I want to explain to you something, which, again, I'm doing this so you can understand, because this could be you. These things are people who have complex brains. We're unusual. Everybody's an individual, and people experience struggles with Shadchanim and don't realize it. They just say, I'm not finding the right one. It may be there's something not connecting. Let me explain to you what was going on with her. I asked her some questions because I had a hunch. I said to her, tell me, do you ever have conversations with yourself inside of your own head? Like whole conversations, like hour-long conversations inside your own head, where you're both speaking and also responding. The whole conversation, full conversations inside your head. She says, how would you have known that? I said, because I know stuff, right? I said, I could tell there was something going on, that you have this unusual thing on your head. I asked her several questions like this to try to test what seemed to be the case. And here's what was going on. She has a corner of her brain, which is separate from the rest of her mind, where she has a parallel universe, where to her it's real. And she goes there sometimes for hours on end and lives in her own imaginary place. She's completely normal. There's no mental health problem whatsoever. She does nothing stupid. It only comes out in that when she talks about certain things, she doesn't always remember that those things are real only in that part of her head, and she ends up making it as if they're more real than they really are, which of course is very disconcerting for somebody who can't understand why she just said that. She even told me, my friends sometimes say I'm a liar, because I say things that to me they're real, and they don't realize that she's not trying to lie. She's just, to her, in her head, she just had the whole conversation. And I assure you, she's completely normal. And what this means is that part of her never, because it's separated, it never gets out into the real world. So nobody knows it. She feels also that part of her cannot connect. And so there's always a feeling that she's, in some respect, even after many, many dates, is never really connected. And to her, it's a very debilitating thing. So she keeps ending up not being able to build a successful relationship with the people she dates. I'm going to give you two more stories. One, I had a guy call me up. This was the Thursday before Tisha B'Av Nidche a year ago, so a year and a half ago. A guy calls me up and he says, the Shadchan said I need to speak to someone, so I've called you. He says, the Shadchan set me up with 10 women, one after the other. I said no. So I would set me up. I said, you're happy to meet her? Yes. Go out. Once, twice, 3 times, whatever. No. I don't find her attractive. Next one. You okay with this one? She's attractive? Yes. Go out. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Next. Not attractive. After 10 times like this, the Shadchan throwing her hand up in the air. What am I supposed to do? This is ridiculous. I find attractive women. I even ask you if you're attracted. You say yes. Then you meet and you say no because of appearance. This is absurd. What am I supposed to do? If this person came to you, what would you tell him? He's looking for someone attractive.
I'm looking at a picture.
It doesn't help. Sorry? No, well, actually, I asked him, because I thought it was theory. I said, were the pictures roughly accurate? He says, yes. He wasn't complaining that people were using photoshopped images or something. He's saying when he met them, it just didn't work for him.
Didn't have to do with the job.
Okay. Now, I just want to tell you, because we're coming to Purim and I'm sitting in front of a room full of Talmidei Chachamim, that I had a theory today. Chiddush, aim based on medrash for a chiddush. Never supposed to anybody. This is my first time rolling this idea out. But I asked myself a question. In the Megillah, there's a whole section where it describes the beauty pageant, the Tachros HaYofi of Achashverosh. Do you think we could have survived without knowing exactly how many months and exactly what the cosmetics were used? Veshisha Chadashim, Hashem and Amar, Veshisha Chadashim, right? We need to have a whole arichas over there of exactly what it was. Just say they're looking for a wife for Achashverosh. Say that, I get it. I think the Megillah is trying to tell us that this is how Achashverosh's priorities. If you want to be like Achashverosh, this is how you do it. Right? Esther was the opposite. She did the minimum she had to do. Just a ha'ara ba'alma. But anyway, so I told this guy that he has something called a dismissive attachment orientation, which means that there's something about him. I won't get into what it is now because I think it's much too long. That means that when he meets somebody who he's trying to build a relationship with, although he wants the relationship and he wants to be married and he likes this person, and there's something inside of his own head is triggered that makes him feel uncomfortable. Example would be some people have difficulty opening up. Talking about themselves is excruciating. Some people have difficulty trusting. They just don't trust. It's very hard for them to trust somebody. Some people find it very hard not to be perfectionist. You may not want to be, but for somebody who's a real perfectionist, the brain goes crazy when you ask it to accept something which isn't in his mind the way it should be. And it reacts with real distress and it feels uncomfortable. And so instead of enjoying the dates, it just feels a hardship. And I just don't feel comfortable. I just don't want to continue. And this happens over and over and over again. Now, when a person is like this, and I'm being mamish makatzer, when a person is like this, they're conflicted because they want to be married, but they don't like the feeling that they go through when that's generated by actual dating. And because of that, they're very sensitive to every small thing because they don't really want it very much, or they want it less than they would than most people would. It results in a certain ambivalence, a certain lack of enthusiasm, a certain level of disinterest. It's very easy to be derailed. And so people like this have a high tendency to put a premium on appearance or on something, usually external, that gets them excited. They say, if I met somebody who was only attractive enough, that would be for sure enough to convince me. Of course, rationally, they're not thinking this, but that's the mindset of what's happening. And I told him, you need to understand that the reason why it's not working is because you're putting the responsibility for your motivation on the appearance of the other person, and that never works. And so at the end of the day, even after you meet somebody who you yourself had said was attractive, you saw the picture, and you say the person looks like the picture, it turns out that will never solve the problem, that your own internal conflict around dating. I know this is mamash b'kitzur nimrus, but I told him that if you take on board what I'm telling you, you'll be engaged in 2 weeks. Never spoke to him again. 3 days later, I get a WhatsApp message from a young lady. Says, I think your prediction is going to come true. I had no idea. I forgot I even said it. I said, what prediction? She says, you know so-and-so? You spoke to him 3 days ago? I said, yes. He says, well, I'm the last person he dated. Now, I obviously realized something had happened. I was very pleased about that because this young lady is a Yosema, and she's the daughter of my wife's best friend. So I was very pleased about this. She tells me, I'll call you, I'll explain to you what happened. He, after speaking to me, called the Shadchanim and says, I think I was too quick to say no to this person. I'd like to meet her again. So she calls up the young lady and says, so-and-so wants to meet you. She says, I don't understand. He said he didn't find me attractive. I haven't changed my appearance in the last 3 days. So what do you want from me? He says he's going to explain himself if you're willing to. He says, okay, I'll hear what he has to say. So she shows up expecting basically to be very cynical and stop wasting my time. So she shows up and says to him, listen, I'm here, but to be honest with you, I don't know why. You said clearly you didn't find me attractive. I respect that. I can't change my appearance. I can't make you like me. In fact, it's okay if you don't. But why are you asking to meet me again? And he says to her, I don't know how to put this to you, but when you came down the stairs to the car tonight, you blew me away. She says, how's it possible? I haven't changed. I was at that wedding. The only reason why I went, because I don't normally go to people's weddings, is because it was my wife's best friend, so I had to go. But here is just a very bekitza. I've not given you the full explanation. It should take me an hour. But I told him. But the Nekudas Hadavar is that people think I don't find a person attractive. Fact, I don't. You know how I know? I was willing to walk away from this person and never see them again, even at the price of being single. That's how sure I am this isn't for me. I'll ask you a question. How right was he in the end? So it's important to be sensitive to the fact that we all have our struggles, and we can all, and it can be appearance, or it can be Hasidishkeit or something else. We get into our head certain things. We believe there's no question it could possibly be anything other than a simple, straightforward fact. And it may not be. It may be generated by a reaction that we have because of the way that our brains are wired. And it's important that when we come to date, we are aware that something may be happening, whether that's in us or in the way we're causing another person to react to us, that may be something that could be changed if we understood what it was. So I'm going to give you my final story. I had only a couple of months ago, sorry, had a young man call me up. So I'm dating somebody 5 times. It's mamish fantastic. I really like her. She likes me. Get along very well. We're perfect for each other. But she says that she feels nothing towards me, and she's concerned that I'm going deeper and deeper into the relationship, and that this is really going to be a disaster because it's not moving for her at all. And I also agree that I'm getting very deeply connected to her, and if she's not going to be able to go forward with this, why am I doing this to myself? So he calls you up. What do you tell him? What should he do?
Why is she not open? Like,
Okay.
She doesn't have an answer to that question necessarily.
Okay, so I'll tell you. So I told him that I have a hunch as to what's going on based upon the facts he gave me, but I would need to speak to her first to see A, if it's really the case, and B, whether she's open to whatever I would be proposing under those circumstances. I spoke to her. Very refined Hasidic from like mamish edel people, and I spoke to her and came to the conclusion that even though I couldn't be sure because of how young they were and how little dating experience they had, I came to the conclusion that it's most likely the case that she is in what I call the 3%. The 3% is my estimation of the number of people who find it difficult to form emotional connections before marriage. They don't fall in love, they grow in love. It's just the way the brain is wired that 97% of people will have some level of emotional connection, like meaningful level of emotional connection, before they get engaged. Most people will have, some will have extreme, some will have moderate, but people 97% will have some level of connection. But that means 3% will have either zero connection, right, or have very limited connection, and not feel that this is enough for them to commit marriage. So I spoke to her, and how did I figure it out? Very simple. The level of compatibility between those two people was off the charts. They were amazing together. There was like not one thing wrong. It was crazy how much they liked each other, how much they got along with each other, how much they respected each other. What would possibly explain how, if that's the case, there's mamish no emotional connection? Oh, I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to tell you the end of the story in a second. So there are all kinds of signs you can tell. I'll give you just one example that you would never guess. People who don't fall in love, because they grow in love. which means that their connections with people develop very strongly over time. So the people they have a connection with, they tend to have very, very substantial connections. I'll give you an example. I just remember this now. I turned around to this young lady and I said, do you have nieces or nephews? Listen, you're going to be shocked by this. This shows you what goes on. Spend a day with me. I said, you have nieces or nephews? She says, yes, I have. I said, do you feel close to them? She says, that's a weird question. Why are you asking me? I said, because this tells me something about you. She says, I have a niece in Israel who I actually, even though I've only met her like once or twice, I feel connected with. And she takes out a phone. She shows me the screensaver of her phone is her niece. I said, you see, how would I have known that? How would I have known that you're close with your niece? I said, because I had a theory that you are part of the 3%. And people in the 3% always have very close relationships with their friends and family. I even have a shtick I asked them. I say, tell me, I'm going to give you a sentence, fill in the word. I, space, my friends. What would you put in that space? I, something, my friends. People in the 3% always say love. Right? Would you say you love your friends or you enjoy your friends or you get along with your friends? Would you put in the word love? People in the 3% do. They have very strong connections with the people, but just not when they're dating. That's how I know that when they're married, they're going to have an amazing relationship, but it's not going to come now. I told her this, and she said, okay, fair enough. What do I do? So I told her, if you're ready to take a risk, I will give you crazy things to do, which will help you to build a connection. Are you willing to be crazy? She said, listen, if it's really going to work, I'll do it. I got the both of them to do a bunch of nutty things. And I asked her, what percentage of connection would you want to have? Right now it's at 0. What percentage would you want to have before you felt it was definitely going sufficiently strongly that you would be willing to commit to marriage? She said 15%. I said, okay, that's a good number. 15% means you can make enough progress. It's going to only continue. I said, go do these things and see what happens. She called me up afterwards. I said, what happened? She says, we did these things and I'm now at 7%. I said, okay. So now you have to get to 15%, continue, and gave her more things to do. She never called me back. Next thing I get is an announcement of their engagement. They got married last week in Crown Heights. What I'm trying to show you is this was a case where it was basically dead in the water, you understand? And they got married. They got engaged within like a week from it's over to getting engaged. How'd you go like that? Because it turned out the solution was not to walk away. The solution was to figure it out. And so let me end with one final question. A mother called me up and she said, my son has met somebody 3 times. They got along very well. They like each other. However, there's no emotional connection. So he doesn't really want to continue because he feels that space not going anywhere. Should I push him to go out a 4th time? Or should I just accept it's over? What would you tell the mother? Sorry? Why? Stam? Jonas? He's saying it's not going anywhere. It's like basically they and let's say it's after 4 dates. He's saying it's basically like you know the Lashon Gemara, Damili Kahani Kahaka Chivru. The Gemara Rabbi Yossi says it's like basically like a white goose. It's garnished, like it's not. Okay. Maybe I told the mother that your options are not the only options. I said there's a third option. What do you mean? Either you continue or you don't. What do you mean? What's the third option? Machakulla, like what are you going to do? I said no, there is a third option. I said not only is the third option, but the third option is the only option. The other 2 options are not valid options. I said you can't continue because what's the point? Stam, you can't quit because you don't know why you're quitting. You're just giving up. I said, why don't you stop and ask yourself, why are they struggling and what can we do to help them? I said, it doesn't mean guaranteed it'll succeed. But when you intervene in the way that I described earlier, there's a 50-50 chance of success. 50% is a very high success rate. If I told you I've got a shidduch, 50% chance you'll marry the person, you're not going to be saying, why am I wasting my time? 50-50 is a very high. I said, why are we walking away? We don't know what we're doing. First of all, ask the question, why is this happening and what can we do to help? If the answer is it's nothing, okay, then you walk away. So let me end with an opinion like this. My friends, dating can be difficult. For some people, not only because the Eibush had been shown us in store for them, also because of the way they're wired. Some people, it's just easy, and for other people, it's taka hard. I'm not playing down the difficulty. It's not easy, and we should do everything we can to make it easier. But we need to understand that for some people, even easy is not easy. They will, in their brain, struggle. They will come away from dates frustrated. They will meet somebody and it won't feel right. And they will go through this over and over again. And there's nothing we can do to make this change. What we need to understand is this. What determines the success is not how easy it is. What determines it is whether it's achievable. If something is not going to work, walk away. Don't waste your time with something which cannot succeed. But if it can succeed, don't walk away, however difficult it is. So here's my story, right? I can't promise you the story is true, but this is what I read. A young man came to the age of Shidduchim and decided to go to ask the bracha from the Rebbe for Shidduchim. This was in the days of dollars. I'm old enough to remember I went dollars many, many times. He got on the line for the men's line. There was a women's line. Gets on the men's line and he waits till his turn comes. And he comes to the Rebbe and he says, "Abracha fa Shidduchim." The Rebbe tells him, "Ki korev elecha hadavar ma'od." So he's very happy. The Rebbe is telling him, "Ki korev elecha." It's going to be mamish. Unfortunately, it didn't work like that. For 2 years, he had only adverse nefesh, got rejections, got failures. It was really, really hard. And finally, he found somebody, got engaged, got married, he's happy. During the Shabbat brachas, liboy noikfoy, he was feeling bad. He says, "I don't understand. The Rebbe told me, Ki korev elecha, how is it possible I went through this?" It bothered him. He shouldn't have to go through this. The Rebbe promised him, Haftach. He decided he has to see the video again. He said, maybe I misheard. Maybe I got it wrong. He goes and gets the video of his moment in dollars. And he watches the video, and lo and behold, the Rebbe did tell him, Ki korev elecha hadavar ma'od. He said, "I don't understand." He was like so confused. Until he realized he was the last man on the men's line, and then started the women's line. The first woman on the women's line was the woman he married. And that the Rebbe never told him it was going to be easy. He told him it was going to be korov. The woman is there. She's waiting for you. It's mamish waiting. In Yiddishkeit, it doesn't say ki kal hadavar ma'od. Kal means easy, no work. It's just going to fall. Ki korov means it's hard work, but it's doable. Stick it out because you'll get there in the end. And I'm saying to you, please don't treat Shidduchim like it has to be easy. They have to fall into place straight away. It has to be free of any agros nefesh. The best Shidduchim that go on for 50 years of happiness, the dating wasn't easy because people are wired differently. And some people, it's just not an easy process. It's never going to be easy for them. And they need to recognize that it doesn't have to be easy. Easy is for some people, and some people for them, it's not going to be easy. But if you're able to succeed and you have 50 years of happiness, we might call the fact that your dating was a bit of a pain in the neck. That's